Okay, everybody, welcome into our live webinar. Today, we're going to be talking on how local investors can not only compete, but win against massive iBuyers, the like of what used to be Zillow offers, Opendoor, and Offerpad. Today, joining me, I have Curtis Roddy, the COO of Fubikazi, but specific to our conversation today, lead propeller. And I also think that I'm uniquely qualified to speak on the subject because I'm the VP of acquisitions and I have the privilege of speaking with hundreds of investors making their websites to do exactly what we're talking about, compete with massive iBuyers. So Curtis, you and I had a discussion before the call and we talked about what is the hottest subject right now in real estate.
Man, yeah, it's crazy. I think everybody's asking me about what is going on with Zillow pulling out of the iBuyer market, right? Like everybody's, everybody from my grandma to real estate investing partners know about Zillow not investing in the market anymore. And the biggest question I'm getting is why is that? Why did they pull out? And why and what's going to happen to the real estate market? Is that like a sign? Does Zillow know something that we don't know? And so it's been an interesting conversation the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and that's kind of the $1 million question. If Zillow can't do it, how can a local investor get it done?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
what the good news is, if you're a local investor watching, real estate has and always will be primarily a locally driven game. But to understand how this works, I think it would make sense to really break down the difference between a local investor versus an iBuyer. So maybe it makes sense, Curtis, to talk about the similarities and differences between the two because they seem like they're the same thing.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean, obviously it's kind of like saying what's the difference between like the local, hardware store and Home Depot or Walmart, right? Like we've got different funding, you've got different locations, you've got different, profit objectives. You've also got different amount like interaction with somebody. So, for me, we've actually had the benefit in this case of like interacting with Zillow and interacting with Opendoor in the past, and we've actually sold properties to them. So I think we bring a different perspective as well as we're investors that buy houses that have also gone the way of selling to Zillow and Opendoor.
Yeah. So I think for me, when I was kind of writing this out and giving it some thought to think, okay, well, at first, before doing a ton of research, now I have not flipped as many homes as Curtis has. He and his partner have done over 1,000, but I have had some interactions with iBuyers, specifically OfferPad. But I thought, hey, what are the similarities? And when I made the list, the similarities were way shorter than the differences. So I would say the biggest similarity, even though they're our number one competition as local real estate investors online, is we're both looking to buy off market deals. That part is
Yep.
simple. But outside of that, it couldn't be more difference once you peel back that curtain to see what's happening on the other side. So I want to talk a little bit to the differences between a local investor like you and I, Curtis, versus a larger iBuyer.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the biggest difference is the funding, right? Like so if you look at it, and that funding influences everything from what a real estate investor can pay for something all the way to like how many deals they can do, right? So Zillow and Opendoor and all these companies are out there. They're buying everything, or not Zillow anymore. They made a couple of mistakes and they're out of the market now. But uh, these big hedge funds are able to buy kind of scoop up everything at a lower profit, whereas most real estate investors, this is their bread and butter. This is how they provide an income for their families, and so they have to make a certain profit goal, and they have a different cost of capital.
Sure, because a lot of that capital for early on investors is probably coming from relationships. So that's family, that's friends, and you know that not only your company, but your livelihood is on the line because these are people you're going to see at Thanksgiving dinner, right?
Exactly. Yep.
I think something else that stuck out to me, talking a little bit about the market environment. So I've had the privilege of learning from flippers who have started at the turn of the last market cycle, and I continue to learn from people like Curtis and Aaron, who I work with every day. And I've seen them go through great markets and markets that are a little bit tougher to find properties in. But when you look at iBuyers, at least in my opinion, they can only really exist when the market continues to appreciate and scale up. It's at least
Yep.
the way I'm seeing it is iBuyers bank on appreciation. Now,
Yeah.
vetted out investors, what's that?
I was just going to say, they're banking on appreciation, but they're also most of these guys are holding on to the properties very short term, right? So like
Right.
Open Door buys your house, 7 days later, it's on the MLS, right?
Right.
So they're really, I think what Opendoor and Zillow and all of them are able to do is they're saying, look, instead of looking for a 20% profit or 15% profit on a turn, they're saying, hey, we'll take, instead of hitting that, home run where we make the 20%, we'll take 3% to 5% gains on every single property, and then and they're banking on that. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other differences, but the big difference is just the profit, disparity that they're looking for.
Right. And a lot of that has to do with how cheap capital is at this point. We're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of capital. We call it hungry money on our end, right? People are just looking for places to park their capital, whatever it may be. And at this point, real estate looks like, as it's always been, that investors have always known, probably the safest place to park your money and to make a return at the same time. And it's my opinion, Curtis, tell me if you agree with this or not. But if as soon as we see a plateau in the market or even a slight drawback, I think we're going to see a lot of these iBuyers run off. And I think it's really going to hurt what their whole business plan is. Would you agree?
No, we've seen this a couple of times. Yeah, right. Like Zillow just started heating up whenever the market started heating up. A couple of years ago, it was the same thing. Pre-COVID, they were pretty hot. Then COVID happened, they pulled out of the market. Then the market started heating back up. They got back into the market. Now here we're seeing Zillow and we're seeing Zillow at least pull out. And from my experience, Opendoor is being a little bit less gratuitous with their offers and what they're making offers on. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more of these, at least the Opendoor and Zillow's pulling out. I think we'll still see a lot of action from the mid-level people, but we probably won't see these crazy aggressive offers that we've been seeing over the past year and a half.
Yeah, and I think to speak to that point, something that was interesting while doing my research before this webinar to kind of tighten up some of our points is Zillow started out as a data company, right?
Yeah.
They did not start out to try to be an iBuyer, but they got so good at the data, or I guess that's debatable based on what we've seen from Zillow offers. But they got so good at the data side, they thought, hey, let's dip our toes in the water of Zillow. And it's my personal opinion, that's why we still see OfferPad and Opendoor around when we don't see Zillow offers. Because Zillow started as a data company that thought they could do more. And, like a lot of people think that you can just throw money at real estate and make money, but it's really not that easy.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, we've had a lot of experience. I could talk for a long time about those experiences, and there's a lot of reasons why Zillow did or did not fail, and same thing with these other iBuyers. But I think the exciting thing is like we're seeing a little bit less competition on the iBuyer side and more availability or like room for the small investor or even the mid-range investor that's buying 10 properties every month to get into the market and to be more aggressive with those acquisitions.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I also think looking at the end game, I think that's probably the biggest difference as while we're talking about this Venn diagram of where we overlap. I think the end game's totally different. So Curtis talked a little bit about, hey, who is funding the local investors? And that turns out to be a lot of family, a lot of friends. But on the flip side of that, we've seen the IPO just in this past year of a couple of these big iBuyers. They're not being funded by the people they're sitting next to at the Thanksgiving table. They're being funded by Wall Street, hedge funds, and they're also being funded by stockholders. They have to answer. So they're hungry and they have to deploy capital. I think that's why we see that 2/3 of the properties that we now know Zillow is selling back out of their inventory, 2/3 of those are selling at a deficit, which means they're selling for less than Zillow actually purchased them for. So I think there's intense pressure on the side of these iBuyers just to make something happen. And when you're looking at a larger game like that, you're not evaluating and running the numbers one by one property to see, hey, how good's it going to go? You're talking to somebody whose job it is to look at an Excel spreadsheet every day that is not local to your market area, just approving properties based on check boxes, which we know if you try that as local investors, just not going to work.
Yeah, but last thing I'll say before we kind of move on to like talking about how small investors can beat these iBuyers now. I think from my experience, we've seen Zillow or Opendoor offering sometimes insanely high on some of the properties. Like, I mean, I'll give you a real world example. I had a property in North Texas. I thought, I was like, hey, I think this thing's going to sell for 380. lots of comps to back that up. Opendoor came in and gave me a $410,000 offer. It was I couldn't believe it, and we closed on it. Yeah, we closed. It was unbelievable. I've also had one lately that we know it's worth at least 190, probably between 180 190, and Opendoor came in and gave me a $150,000 offer. Right. So the reason that Opendoor and Zillow are getting some of these properties are because they're giving these insanely high offers, and I'm tracking these after. So we sell to them and they put on MLS and they sit on the market for 60, 90 days. And they're ended up, they end up losing money on them. Like you just said, 2/3 of these Zillow houses are selling for less. But the way they're making these offers is that they're using data, right? So Zillow has all this data. Opendoor has a plethora of data. They're making some crazy offer based off of comps, right? And the great thing about using a realtor or being a realtor and using comps is you have that qualitative analysis too, right? So the qualitative part helps you better understand stuff. Well, Zillow, it's not like there's a checkbox that says, hey, this has a really nice living room and granite and vaulted ceilings and all that stuff.
Right.
So they offer way lower. And so, anyways, if you get lucky with one of these offers, then you're great. If not, then it's just a problem with the data. So and again, so what's happening is Opendoor makes you an offer for way more than they think it's actually worth, and then they come in and they'll say, hey, this actually has $60,000 worth of repairs. We've had one where they came in, they said, hey, your house has $30,000 of repairs, and I'm like, oh, we just actually got this to market ready condition. There's no repairs needed. So that's how they're kind of coming back. And when we'll talk a little bit, and this is probably a little bit of a segue into why, how we can beat Zillow. That's something you tell people. It's, hey, Zillow is going to make you a higher offer. I promise. They can pay more than I can. But what they're going to do is they're going to come in and they're going to say, hey, I'll give you, market value. But then they'll come back and say, yeah, but also you need to pay 5% for a service fee and $20,000 for repairs and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And because you've written so many of these budgets to have to repair homes, what are you seeing on the other end? So you write your own budget, Curtis, and then, Opendoor comes on and say, hey, Curtis, you have 60 grand worth of repairs. What is the markup on repairs, would you say, when you're going to a faceless iBuyer?
I mean,
if you had to just spitball.
I mean, it varies. That's the problem. Is I've got a house that they literally said you have $20,000 of repairs that has a couple $100. We've already spent the $20,000. Right. And I've also had a house where we didn't do anything. We sold to them and they said, hey, it has $3,000 worth of repairs, and it really probably had way more than that. So what's happening is Zillow, or at least Opendoor, I can't speak to the way Zillow is kind of completing the evaluation phase. Opendoor is didn't have the opportunity. Maybe one day, but Opendoor is not even going into the houses. So they make an offer, then they say send somebody to walk around the outside. So you have a really nice outside, shut the blinds, and then you do a virtual walkthrough with people, and they give you an offer, and they get that finalized. That's how they're coming up with the repair budget. So it's not feasible. There's no way to continue. That got pretty far away from your question about what is their markup.
No,
but
these are good. This is good.
The markup, I don't know. I can't figure out the market. We've every time we buy a house, we go to Opendoor, Zillow, or OfferPad and see what they'll offer us to see if they'll overpay. 3 out of 4 times they don't, and we've had 1 out of 4 where they're just absolutely overpaying for some of these.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's irritating for me. I was going to kind of say exactly what you said. It's not like a 2 or 3 times markup. If you're paying for a 2x4 to be put in, you might just have to spend $45-$50 to get it right. Maybe if you have to match the paint.
Yeah.
But if you have Opendoor doing it, you're going to get charged probably close to $500-$600 for that small repair, because they take advantage of home sellers who don't know what it actually costs to make a small repair. And they factor in the headache, and that headache is more expensive to the home seller than the actual repair itself every time.
Yeah, well, sellers are so excited, oh my gosh, I can't believe they gave me $410,000 offer. And then they come back and say, oh yeah, but you got $20,000 worth of repairs. And they're like, oh, but I really wanted to sell, and I've already made an offer on this house. and we started packing the boxes. Okay, I guess I'll go along with it. So
Exactly.
so guys, if you have questions, just want to before we before we transition to the actual strategy, if you guys have questions, put it in the comments. We're going to answer them throughout. So we've already had a couple of great questions come in. We will definitely, before this webinar is over, we'll make sure we answer all your questions. But Thomas, how do iBuyers beat or compete with Zillow? Sorry, how do small investors? Zillow, they're not in the market anymore. So how do small investors compete with iBuyers?
Well, kind of like we were talking about earlier, real estate has always been and will always favor the local investor. And just because that transaction doesn't start online, or just because it does start online, doesn't make that any different. And like I said at the top of this, I've had the privilege of talking to hundreds of investors coming through our company, Lead Propeller, and I get an understanding of, hey, where they come from and where they're hoping to go. And oftentimes, when I'm doing their onboarding calls with them, it's a redirect, right? People come in and say, hey, I want to take over the world. I want to, go national. I'm going to have this one website, Thomas Buys Homes. I'm buying everything from Hawaii, Alaska, the tip of Florida, and Washington State. Thomas, how can you help me out? And that's where we have a little dose of reality come in, right?
Yep.
Because it's all about going local, and it's all about being aware of what your weight class is. Because we've been talking a lot of smack about these iBuyers. The truth is, they buy a ton of homes. They're buying homes of your next door neighbors, in your neighborhood, in the city, next to your grandmother's home. iBuyers are stealing property, right? So with that in mind, we don't want to compete in that weight class. If you're going to go up against the Bamas of the world, get ready to get crushed. And I'm saying that because Curtis is an Oklahoma State fan. So he's dreaming about wanting to one day
be there
play.
This year. We're going to be there this year, man.
Well, we'll see.
We'll play this back. We're going to play this back in a couple months.
I think my point to local investors here is we need to set expectations from the top. And that's how you need to build out your websites, right? So it used to be a time where having a website was just a nice tool that you had. It's like, oh, hey, also I have this website if it's helpful. In 2021, where we are now, everybody sees where the market is going. And I'm telling you what, it's not going more to bandit signs. It's not going more to direct mailers. It's always going to favor door knocking. Don't get me wrong. I love the door knockers out there watching. But if you don't have a website in 2021, you're going to be archaic sooner than later. So where does that start? Right?
No, I mean, I think like you said, I think you've got to have the website. You've got to be modern, right? Like you've got to have a place for people to bring people. But but you've also got to do the old stuff. The things that what differentiates you from the iBuyers or from the big funds out there trying to just selling, sending a million postcards out and hoping that they get 1,000 people call them back. It's the personal interaction. It's the quick touch. It's really the caring and understanding somebody's story. So, I like you said, you've got to be digital. You've got to have some authority in your market, but you've also got to keep continuing on. We still are door knocking. We still are doing the small things that make us, an authority in this local market. But we're also making sure that we've got a social presence. We've got our website. We've got websites, and we know what's going on in our market.
Yeah, and I think it might be helpful to all the people who are shocked that Curtis and I are saying, hey, don't try to market nationally. I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson just based on what we've seen on our data. So Lead Propeller was founded in 2016. At that time, it was still a possibility that, hey, you could market nationwide. Then we go on to 2017, 2018, and that's really where we see iBuyers kick up on a national scale. I think personally, the biggest thing that they needed to overcome was people who were hesitant about trying to sell their home online. I mean, I remember being around when eBay, right, was just ramping up. And even just buying a book off Amazon, like it kind of seemed a little weird. But then we expect people to be comfortable selling their home online. So in 2019, we start seeing the iBuyers take more of a national stage. At that point, local investors had to scale it back, and the largest effective net they could cast was regional. Fast forward to 2020, maybe you could have some success in the state level, but in 2021, and this is what I'm seeing based on hundreds of interactions with investors, you really need to niche down to the smallest market possible. And I'll tell you why. It's because people will sell at a discount to their neighbors. We see this time and time again, and it's ultra effective. So right now, I think that the largest net that you can effectively cast with a modest marketing budget is probably at the county level.
Yeah.
And I can even take that out a step further, Curtis. I have one specific investor who is up in New York. And as you can guess, a massive city like New York is probably going to be ultra competitive. He has had a ton of success. And the reason is because he targets one individual block. His URL is focused on that individual block. All of his copy is towards that block. And he owns something like 5 to 7% of the properties there, which doesn't sound like a lot, but these are all condos. And he's doing very well by doing exactly what we're recommending here.
Yeah, I mean, you get, instead of having one touch to 1,000 people, you get 10 touches to 100 people. And so the more of those touches that you get, the more reminders that people are getting, the more likely you are to have some sort of conversion when a month down the line, like, there's a family event or there's a distressed event. Or, I mean, we talk about foreclosures a lot, hey, I missed my mortgage payment. I lost my job, right?
Right.
Who are you going to think of? Are you going to think, especially you lost your job or something like that that's a little bit more fragile? Do you want to call Zillow? Like, are you sure that Zillow is going to be able to transact? Get on Google. They're not. You Opendoor, same thing, right? Like I've again, until I did like 10 of these transactions with Opendoor, I was still a little hesitant. I'm like, are they going to pull this offer? And they've done that a couple of times. And
yeah,
so,
me too.
right. So, yeah. So the, I think that having that personal touch and again, understanding and being able to talk to somebody is really important. We just talked about that, but being able to market more efficiently and really it's kind of more of a guerrilla tactic marketing if you can make that area smaller. So, I mean, we've got lead propeller customers that use, area codes. It'll be like, I'll say, I don't think there's one for this one. We'll say 954homebuyers.com. Or,
right.
I mean, we've got people that do, big neighborhoods. Like you just talked about a block. We've got to literally have somebody that says his name, buystheblock.com, and he's one of the most successful people we have, right? He's getting a ton of leads. We've got neighborhoods like iBuyhousesinStonebridge.com. I mean, that would be a great, like, there's thousands of houses. Why not just hit all of them at once and be very strategic to those people?
Yeah, so a lot of that's really high level stuff. I completely agree with you, Curtis, but maybe we should take it down to some more basic things that people might need to do just because, and I just checked this before coming on, the average human attention span. Did you catch what that was, Curtis?
I didn't catch it. It was
you want to guess? Yeah, don't read it.
I'm reading it. 8 seconds.
All right, it's 8 seconds. So how in 8 seconds do you build trust, confidence, a reputation with a home seller going to your website? Well, the answer is simple. It's what Curtis and I have been talking about the entire time. Get local. Well, how do you get local? You just write, Atlanta, Smyrna, Marietta. I'm from Atlanta. These are all Atlanta examples, but exactly that. So on the background of my website, I have the first picture you see. It's not some big stock footage of Atlanta. It's a picture of a street that only locals would know. We have restaurants that only locals go to, right? And the reason we want to do that, have a main street or have a landmark, is because we know the corporate iBuyers aren't taking that level of effort, maybe because they don't want to, but I think it's more probable because they aren't truly everybody's neighbor, right? Curtis, in your neighborhood, people need to know who you are so that they can trust you with selling the largest investment of their life.
Yep.
And to further that point, it bleeds right into the copy on your website. So everything you write, like example, Curtis is in Texas, I'm in Georgia. Every chance I have to write y'all, you better believe it's on the site, right? When I have the description of myself, again, I know I keep saying it, but I'm from Atlanta. The two greater things that come from Atlanta, Chick-fil-A and Coca-Cola. So when I'm writing my copy, I say, hey, let's sit down at a local Chick-fil-A, the one right off your street. Let's chat about your house over Coke, right? So it sounds silly, but it's things like that that separates you.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's really, and then people hear about you too, right? You're doing that. They're like, hey, like they go to your website and they say, hey, like Thomas looks like he's from here. Like, there's always, like, when you're wanting to sell it to somebody, there's always a big discussion about it. Well, I can't see that. It's
Oh, it's an
the
A. People,
Astros. Oh, okay.
yeah.
All right. People stings still. The people are always getting like, if I send you a bunch of postcards, you might not be the person that sells me your house, but your neighbor might, because your neighbor's going to say, "Hey, do you know a realtor that'll help me sell my house, or do you know somebody that wants to buy a house in this neighborhood?" And they're going to, you know what, I don't, but there's this guy named Thomas. He keeps sending me stuff. He lives right down the street, I think, and he's buying houses, right? So that's, I think, a great way. And like you said, being super personal and personalizing that landing page that you have is really important. The
So
one other thing that I'd add in, that not in the notes, Thomas, so I apologize that this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but one thing that we started doing is we actually put signs of, people put signs when they're trying to sell their house. We started put signs in the yard whenever we buy a house that says, "Hey, Curtis Roddy just bought this house. We'll buy yours too. It's a great," and it's a great process and stuff. And so people ask that person who we're buying their house, or they'll call John up, and they'll say, "Hey, like, how was it selling that house to Curtis?" Well, he transacted. He held up his end of the deal. He made it really easy for me. And so I would encourage a lot of people. I think that's something that not enough people do, is kind of trying to promote the fact that they are active in that neighborhood, instead of just seeing the like that Keller Williams sign or the realtor sign that you see in the yard once it's ready to be sold.
And I think that touches on something that I get as an objection a lot of times that I make suggestions, just like you are, Curtis. People all want to make themselves seem like iBuyers. They want to
Yeah.
be as big as Zillow, right? They want to
Yep.
be as big as Offerpad. So I see a lot of video content out there. I see a lot of photoshopped images to make yourself, looking as nice as you can with new construction in the background. But the truth is, it's almost more effective if you have a picture that isn't photoshopped. If you have a
Yep.
picture that you just took on your phone, if you have a video that has the static, or for someone like myself, if you could hear somebody talking in the background of one of my videos, that lets people know, hey, Thomas is actually somebody who's out there grinding and hustling. He's not some big corporate guy who I'm not going to be able to trust,
Yep.
which kind of leads to the point of having some of that local celebrity status. The litmus test that I always talk about when I have these onboarding calls with new investors is, if your website isn't personal enough so that whoever the home seller is thinks that they're going to run into at their local supermarket, it's not personal enough, right? So you want to be sure on your website you have your picture, not a stock image, not even a team picture, even though it looks nice. Have your personal picture, because I tell you this, when a seller picks up the phone and it's Curtis on the other end, when a seller schedules a home walkthrough and it's Curtis showing up to their house, or when somebody's signing off on their home and it's Curtis at the kitchen table, he's getting that deal every time versus the layer upon layer upon layer of corporate BS you have to go through with some of these iBuyers. And that's the truth. Haven't you experienced that, Curtis? The lack of
Yeah.
personality going to an iBuyer?
Yeah, that's awesome you bring that up. Yes, like, I mean, on both sides, on both sides of the transaction, I felt that. I've on selling houses to these iBuyers, it is like, I mean, you're talking 2 or 3 days response time. Maybe you get a response. Hey, can I negotiate with you? 3 days later, no, this is a final offer. Hey, how did you come up with that repair budget? This thing is ready to go and put on the
Right.
market. That's just the number that our team came up, right? Very unpersonalized. Whereas when a buyer, like when I'm transacting with a seller right now, I'm like, hey, this is actually what I think your house is worth. This is how much money I'm going to make. I have to make money on this, so just want to let you know you could put this on the market and probably make more. This is what I'm spending. I'll show them my budget on how, like, broken down budget on the repairs. Very personalized. It's like, hey, I put a lot of time and effort into this. And then I've done that. And then on the buying side, I've seen houses on the market that have got a big Opendoor or Zillow sign in the yard, and I'll call the real estate agent, and I don't get through to anybody. Right? Like in the traditional retail market, you call a real estate agent, they answer like that second, or they call you back 20 times afterwards until they get to talk to you. You don't see that with these big corporate companies that are selling houses. They just don't, because there's not the level of care or attention. There's not an agent that's trying to get a commission that, like, drives their livelihood from this. It's not an investor that's trying to make sure they sell or buy a house because their livelihood's on this. these corporate companies, these Wall Street funded companies, it's just not the same level of personalization. So this kind of all goes back to the personal touch that we've talked about the entire time, and really Thomas's conversation about Chick-fil-A is funny as that is, it works. I mean, really, like if you talk about Chick-fil-A, I mean, I think there's a lot of people in Georgia that are going to identify with Thomas.
Or Waffle House. We got a bunch of them.
Or Waffle House. Yeah, exactly. So meet me at the Chick-fil-A or the Waffle House, depending on where it is. And then, the only other thing I wanted to talk about, Thomas mentioned, was, people have these pictures of them in front of their $1 million house or these brand new construction. I'm not going to go into Killeen, Texas, where the average house is $150,000 with my 200, with a picture of me in front of a $1 million house, because I think somebody sees that and say, oh, they don't buy houses in this condition, right? They don't buy houses that are, only $150,000 or need some repairs, right? Conversely, I also see a lot of websites where people have pictures of like burnt down houses or like totally like destroyed houses. And I see that as a seller. I'm like, well, they probably don't buy this because it's not in the right, they're looking to make a 50% profit or something. So I think being very personalized to the area, having pictures of properties that you've actually sold in the area, that first 8 seconds somebody's on your landing page, they see that picture, it's got to say, hey, Thomas buys houses like mine in my area, and he's going to transact.
Yeah. And on top of that, I think we probably saved the best for last is follow-up, right? So my heart gets broken the most, not for investors who never make websites. It's for the investors who have leads that they followed up with once, couldn't get them on the phone, and they leave them to die, right?
Yep.
That breaks my heart as somebody who's on the phone, cold calls, door knocks, and has a website as well. So I know that Lead Propeller has a resource to do that. We have an autoresponder where we shoot out a text on your behalf. We have an auto email so that you stay top of mind for anybody to try to sell their home. Again, based on our research, we found anybody looking to sell their home online looks at an average of 3 home buyers before they make their decision. So the biggest thing for you is, how do you stay top of mind? And again, I talk about Lead Propeller because I know we have this technology built in. But if you're, have your own website you've built or you're through somebody else, try to figure out how you can get those autoresponders in, because your presence, your local presence, even better, is so important. And I'll give you this one pro tip before we get off the topic. The best text that I've found that I use for my own website is, this is what goes up. So you have a delay of 5 or 6 minutes to make sure it doesn't seem like a robot sending any kind of these texts. You open the text. Here's the text you get from Thomas McCormick. It has a local area code. So for me, it's 678. So they know I'm in their backyard. And it says, hi, my name is Thomas McCormick. I write all the cash offers for my website. And I want to be sure that we give you the most money possible for your property. Do you have any pictures or videos of your home that might help me do that? So it does a couple things. Primarily, it starts the conversation. So many times I get blown up with pictures. I get blown up with videos, things you would not think a home seller would want to share with a home buyer. But people enjoy the transparency from your end, and they're going to show you the same in favor. So that starts a conversation no matter what time of day it is. If you're not using an autoresponder now, you're missing out.
I love it. Can we answer some questions, Thomas?
I got all the time in the world.
All right, you got all the time in the world.
Do we have some hard ones? Let's get the hard ones.
Oh man, all right. But I don't have any hard ones. These are all questions that you know a lot about. We got first one. Thomas, can you talk a little bit more about niche marketing? How can you make your website work better for you?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about this, and you'll have to excuse me, Veteran Buys Properties. I don't know at what point you submitted this question, but something I touched on that I've seen be tremendously successful is personalized videos, video content everywhere it can be. Now, a lot of people understand, hey, I should have a video just of myself talking, right? Right on the beginning. Hi, my name is Thomas at Atlanta Cash Offers. We turn, dumps of properties into cornerstone properties for neighborhood. That's all good. I think it's all necessary, but people have seen that before. Yeah. Where I'm seeing a lot of success is where people make a video for the page that only home sellers are going to land on. So in the thank you page that says, hey, thank you for submitting your property, they actually have a video of themselves talking. Anywhere that you can replace text on your website with a video of you talking directly to a home seller, That's where you need to be spending your time. And again, it doesn't have to be professional. It doesn't have to have any CGI, or it doesn't even have to have a Zoom background. If people can see you talking directly to them, that's how you build trust, and that's how you buy homes at a discount.
I mean, we talk about just like being personal and having personalized videos. There's a lot. I mean, we've used one called Bonjoro where we'll get a lead comes in, and I get a lead, get a notification. I just pull my phone out and say, "Hey Thomas, just got your lead. Or your a notification that says you're interested in selling your house. I'm going to start working on this right away. We're excited to work with you. Let me know if you have any questions." You send that video. Man, there's nothing more personalized than that. You literally just like took out. It only takes 30 seconds of your time. And
Yep.
so that's another thing that, that's really on the follow up. I think this question is also talking about like how are we marketing in these smaller markets, right? Like just like as far as acquiring properties, or trying to get people and drive them to your Lead Repeller website.
Sure.
What ideas do you have, right? And I and I'll answer my question or this question a little bit and say, the great thing about marketing in smaller areas is that you can, if you have that same ad spend. So say you were going to spend $5,000 a month in all of Texas, right? Like it's not going to go very far for you, right? You're going to get maybe one postcard out to a small group of people or a group of people scattered across the state, and it's going to be harder to follow up and all that. Whereas if you're doing a zip code or a city or neighborhood, I can take that. I can use PPC. I can do SEO specifically designed for my market. Right, it's going to be cheaper. So, for example, in Dallas, I think a cost per click is like $6. Where in McKinney or a small suburb of Dallas, or another city inside of Dallas, I might be able to get a click for 50 cents. And so again, you get to drive that dollar further. And then I'm going to send a postcard. I'm going to send out. I'm going to do PPC SEO. I might do door hangers. I might get a billboard. There's a lot more that you can do in that smaller area to make yourself look like that local celebrity that's buying a bunch of houses.
And that's where you get some of that compounding effect as well, right? So you already have the URL, but as soon as you integrate that with the business cards, with the door hangers, with
Yep.
the bandit signs, you're able to cross-reference your website on all of those different platforms. You're going to start driving in organic leads, and it's a little bit more advanced than what we're talking about here on this webinar. But if you can start referencing one or the other, or you have the website and you have a picture of your bandit sign, more than likely people are going to your website because they saw it on a bandit sign. So you just want anything you can
Yep.
do to connect. And hopefully we covered your question. That was a great one. So thank you.
That kind of leads into Lighthouse, this question, right? Like, what great website is fantastic, but if nobody's going to your website, it's kind of worthless, right? If nobody's going there, like, how are you? So, question is, how do you drive traffic to that? And I think Thomas will talk a lot about, or like digital ways to do that. But I think a lot of people get lost in the. There's also, like Thomas just talked about, these bandit signs, there's door hangers, business cards, lots of other things where people see your website and they say, okay, I'm going to go to that. I'm driving and I see somebody has a bandit sign that says, I buy houses or I do anything. Like, as a consumer of things, if I see a bandit sign that has an advertisement for something that I'm looking to do, I'm more likely to go to that website. If you don't have a website, obviously I'm not going to your website. If it has a phone number, I'm much less likely. So make sure that you're marketing your website on all of your marketing pieces, not just online or email or Facebook, but make sure that every single piece of your marketing campaign has your website and your information on it. Thomas, do you want to talk a little bit about PPC and SEO and some of the other strategies there too?
Sure. Yeah. And I think people forget this oftentimes, right? Google is not just a search engine, it's a business. And they're in the business of giving the best results to their end user, which would be me if I'm searching on Google for something. So, because of that, they have an algorithm that changes on a weekly basis. I promise you, it is a very profitable full time job just to understand Google's algorithm. So there are a couple of basics and things that you can do that are all outlined if you have a Lead Propeller site, which you'll have to excuse me, Lighthouse Proteges. I don't know if you do or you don't. I would strongly recommend one. But I guess where I'm getting at is Google has a couple KPIs that they rank websites on. Some of those very common KPIs are traffic driven to sites, right? And in 2021, we're not at the point where you can just slap, Thomas buys houses as your URL. You're not going to show up as number one in Google. What a lot of people don't know is it takes about 8 months before Google even starts recognizing you as a successful website that actually adds value to their end users. So a lot of people do everything that we recommend for SEO purposes, and they're like, hey, Thomas, I did everything. What the heck, man? Where are my leads? The answer is, just like every small business, and just how often we see small businesses, small restaurants you've probably seen fail like that, Google looks at websites the exact same way. So they say, hey, in the first 6 months, you don't really mean anything to us. Anybody can have a website for 6 months. But if you consistently put out content and after 8 months, you're still there, Google starts to recognize, hey, Lighthouse is a good website. But I'll close all that question out by saying the juice, the steroids of advertising on Google is PPC. The number one way you can jump from the bottom of Google results to the top is exactly what Curtis was talking about. Pay-per-click advertising. That's the fast pass of Google, right? It allows you to jump the line that would take 8 months to do, and you get right on top. And like we said, sellers are looking at 3 websites before they choose a seller. You don't have to be the number one result, but as long as you're in the top 3, that's your money spot.
That's a good point. All right, give you another question. Eric's asked, when Zillow is selling their houses at a deficit, are they selling to investors or like who are they selling it to? And I think I've got an interesting story. I think, and I've seen it happen. So like I said, whenever we buy houses or we sell houses to Zillow or Opendoor or some of these iBuyers, we're actually like, I sell it and I'm like, man, there's no way they're going to sell for that much. So I set up an MLS alert or an alert to watch and see what's actually happening. And it looks like what happens is they buy it, they put it on the market, and it sits on the market for 30 days. Then there's some sort of algorithm they have that says, okay, we need to take off $10,000. Then another 30 days goes by, and they're like, okay, we need to take off another 20,000. So they're actually selling to, I think, a retail buyer, but they're a little bit more desperate, and it's a lot of times to these retail buyers that are like, finally, a house that I made an offer on and it didn't have 50 other competing offers. Right now, that's kind of what we're seeing. So I don't think that Zillow or these corporate iBuyers are selling from corporate iBuyer to corporate iBuyer, mainly because their strategy is to sell a house before it hits MLS, right? So if somebody sees that, hey, Curtis Roddy just sold this house to Zillow for $400,000 3 days ago, and now Zillow is trying to sell it for $430,000, you would assume that you're not getting a very good value there. So hopefully that answers your question. We'd love to kind of follow up on that.
Yeah, I think what I would add to that, Eric, is I 100% agree with Curtis, right? They are going to retail buyers, but specifically talking about Zillow offers and them failing, they have 7,000 homes in their inventory that they are trying to liquidate, right? So this is egg on the face of Zillow offers. This is egg on the face of Zillow's CEO. They've laid off a fourth of their workforce because of this. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to get rid of these houses as quickly as possible. So specific to Zillow offers, they're actually packaging these up as portfolios, trying to sell these off to larger hedge funds and trying to say, hey, can we get this off our plate? Now, will they make money? Yeah. We don't know. But it's kind of that whole idea of who's the last idiot, right? If somebody else will validate your purchase by being the next idiot, then you're good to go. So that's what we're seeing happening specific to Zillow offers. But again, what Curtis had to say about the algorithms predicting what prices are in terms of your average iBuyer, I think he hit the nail on the head.
Awesome. Thomas, anything else before we wrap this up?
I'm good. Hopefully we answered all the questions. I know we got a lot of good ones, so I apologize to those that we weren't able to answer. But Curtis, if you're good to close out, I can close this out, buddy.
All right, let's go.
So on behalf of Curtis, myself, all the companies under Fubikazi's family of companies, we'd like to say thank you for taking the time to be with us. And Curtis, what'd your dad used to say again?
Oh, man. Don't pay retail for real estate.
Never pay retail for real estate. So stick around. We're going to send you the next time that we're going to have a webinar, because the more questions we get, the more interactive we can be, the more we're able to help other investors, not only in Texas, but across the country. So thank you all for being with us.
Thanks, guys.